Volcanics are one of those strategies that everyone loves, but no one really wants to be super relevant because it's a burn strategy and no one wants to deal with that. What I do appreciate about Volcanics though, as compared to historical burn strategies, is that it's not some stun-oriented stall deck, and so while I'll be careful to make this a super consistent OTK, I still think there's a place for alternative win strategies in the game to make any format more interesting. Volcanics are a burn deck that also combines elements of field control with cards like the Blaze Accelerators. As mentioned, their approach to burn is in stark contrast to typical burn strategies in the game's history, wherein Volcanics can still lean into typical monster plays to attack in addition to inflict damage. Volcanics were another early archetype, actually debuting in the same set as Crystal Beast and Force of the Breaker in 2007. While the archetype on its own wasn't much of a force, it did momentarily serve as a legitimate engine for Volcanic monarchs, think the cards like Volcanic Shell serving as great fodder for cards like Phoenix Wing, and Volcanic Rocket being a search on summon that was far less commonplace back when easy +1s actually meant something. It was simple times, y'all. As for where the deck has gone since, it was largely quiet for the next 15 years, with only Blaze Accelerator Reload coming out in 2015. Strong card, but still not enough to bring the deck into relevance. And then came the end of 2023, where Konami dropped a number of Volcanic cards that truly made the deck worthwhile. This included a retrained Blaze Accelerator, another Searcher on Summon in Volcanic Trooper, a Graveyard Setup card in Rimfire, a Bonafide Boss in Emperor, and a strong burn card in Emission. It was good enough to make the deck a nice rogue option, especially when combined with other engines like Fire Kings, Snake Eyes, or Horus, but just bad enough to avoid that aforementioned issues of making burn too consistent. Where I want to take the deck is to give it incentives to burn beyond just life point damage. What I mean is that the more you burn, the more powerful effects you can access to control the game and generate advantage. This method of support continues to build out the archetype in such a way that yes, burn damage is still the bread and butter, but that burn damage opens up more options for the deck beyond the burn. The one monster is a Contact Fusion Volcanic Jinn. This card is made up by sending 2 Volcanic monsters you control to the grave, but if you have inflicted effect damage to your opponent this turn, you can also use 1 monster from your deck as material. You can only summon 1 Volcanic Jinn per turn. During your main phase, you can special summon 1 Volcanic monster from your deck with an attack less than or equal to the amount of effect damage your opponent has taken this turn. So this is what I'm talking about when I say accessing more powerful effects through burn, because this card basically serves as a way to foolish your Emperor, Rimfire, Shell, Scattershot, what have you, while also giving you a way to access whichever monster you didn't open with. One of the goals I keep in mind with Legacy support is trying to loop in as much of the old cards as possible, and I think this card makes Volcanic Slicer a very strong opening for the deck, which I'll show in the demonstration. The one spell is Volcanic Sea, a field that has 3 effects. First, each time a fire monster activates its effect, inflict 100 damage to your opponent when it resolves. Second, during your main phase, you can add 1 Volcanic monster from your deck to your hand with a level less than or equal to the number of times you have inflicted effect damage to your opponent during this turn. And finally, if your opponent summons a monster with an attack less than the total effect damage you inflicted to your opponent during the previous turn, you can destroy that monster. So it's basically like setting up the floor with all that lava, and the more the floor is lava, the bigger the monster you can envelop in the heat. Both those effects are hard once per turn. And then for the trap, we have Volcanic Scorch, which you can activate from your hand by discarding 1 Volcanic monster at activation. When your opponent activates a monster effect, send 1 Volcanic monster from your deck to the grave, and if its attack is greater than the attack of the monster whose effect was activated, negate that effect. The deck has a monster effect negator in the form of a trap already, but I like this one as an extra option because Inferno only works against monsters on the field, and Scorch also works as a hand trap, whether going first or second, to not just set up your grave from your deck, but also to get your combos through. This demonstration will be a 2-card combo using Volcanic Sea and one of those older cards that I was talking about, Volcanic Slicer. So this combo eventually turns into the similar line that you'll follow with the typical OTK for Volcanics. It's just a different way to arrive at it. So we're going to start off by activating Volcanic Sea and normal summoning the Slicer. We'll use the Slicer's effect to inflict 500 damage to our opponent. I'm going to use this life point counter for my opponent instead. So inflict 500, and then Volcanic Sea, since the effect of a fire monster resolves, will inflict another 100. Now that we've inflicted effect damage to our opponent, we can bring out Volcanic Jinn, use 1 monster from our deck as material. So we're going to use the Scatter Shot from our deck and the Slicer that is on our board to bring out the Jinn. Scatter Shot, when it hits the grave, inflicts 500 damage to our opponent, and then 100 more for Volcanic Sea, so another 500, 100 pairing. We've inflicted 1200 burn damage to our opponent at this point, so with the effect of Jinn, we can bring out a Volcanic monster from our deck that has an attack of less than or equal to 1200. Volcanic Trooper fits the bill since it has 1,000 attack, and that'll be another 100 damage from Volcanic Sea. Trooper's effect activates, allowing us to search out a Volcanic card from deck to hand. We will grab the Volcanic Blaze Accelerator, and C will do another 100 damage. Then we will activate Volcanic Blaze Accelerator by sending Blaze Accelerator from our deck to our grave. Now that we've inflicted, I believe, burn damage to our opponent 8 times, we can add a Volcanic monster whose level is less than or equal to 8, which is more than enough because we're going to go for a level 1. We're going to go for the shell. We'll use the effect of the Trooper to discard a card and special summon a bomb token to our opponent's side of the field. 1,000 attack, 1,000 defense. And that'll be another 100. And then we will activate the effect of Shell in our grave by paying 500 life points so we can add another shell from our deck to our hand. That'll be another 100 thanks to the C. And then we will use the effect of Blaze Accelerator to special summon a Volcanic monster from our hand. We'll bring out the shell, link it off for Relinquished Anima, then use the next copy of shell to grab the third copy. And that will be another 100 damage thanks to the C, and we've paid 1,000 life points. I know I'm not keeping track of it. It doesn't really matter. We are then going to send our level 4 or lower fire monster as well as a spellcaster monster to bring out the Inari Fire. And Inari Fire on summon is going to burn our opponent equal to the attack of one monster they control, so that's going to be the 1,000, and then Volcanic Sea will be another 100. We'll then use the effect of the Blaze Accelerator to send a Pyro level 1 Pyro monster from our deck to the grave to destroy a monster they control. We'll get rid of that token. It's going to be the Rimfire. And then when that token is destroyed, they take 500 damage, as is stated by the effect of Trooper. Rimfire, when it hits the grave, activates its effect to banish it to send a Volcanic monster from deck to grave. So that's going to be the Emperor. And this is where I was talking about, where the combo is more or less the same as the typical Volcanic OTK combo. And thanks to C, that's going to be another 100 damage. We'll then link off Inari Fire and Jinn into the Sunlight Wolf. We'll bring out the Emperor using its effect by summoning process by banishing 3 Pyro monsters from our graveyard. So, oh, I forgot. The effect of Inari Fire is going to activate since it hit the grave. We're going to search out the Spiritual Fire Art. Can't forget that. Alright, then we're going to banish 3 to bring out the Volcanic Emperor. And since a monster was summoned to a zone Sunlight Wolf points to, we can add a fire monster from grave to hand. And then since Emperor was brought out by his summoning method, we can inflict 500 damage to our opponent for each banished pyro monster. That's 4. Then we can set 1 Volcanic Trap directly from our deck. So that's going to be 2,000 from that, 100 from Volcanic Sea. Sunlight Wolf is going to grab us the Trooper, and then another 100 for the Sea. And then I know I'm kind of doing things in a weird order here. We're going to grab a trap from our deck. It can be Emission. We don't necessarily need Emission. And then it can be Scorch if you want the effect negation. And then I forget the other trap that had been recently released that also allows you to monster negate. I don't have that in my build right now. Or maybe, no, yeah, I don't. So I'll just grab the Scorch. If you hadn't inflicted enough burn damage, like for example, if you, for some reason, anything got negated or whatever, you didn't have C, then you would, of course, grab the Emission. You can set that Spiritual Fire Art, pass to the opponent, and then right away you can activate Spiritual Fire Art, get rid of this guy, and inflict 3,100 damage to your opponent, and that would be the game. And that is a demonstration of the Volcanic deck with this new custom support. So that does it for the Volcanics custom support. Short and sweet, because I do think the deck, especially with its relatively recently released cards, is pretty good. Just needs a few more, like the one shown here, to make it really go. Make sure you like, share, subscribe, because in 2 weeks, it'll all be clear.